I was just a baby when the Challenger Shuttle tragedy happened, but it was one of those things that was so catastrophic and horrific that it was still a major conversation topic even well into my childhood. I remember hearing about it, even if back then if I didn't really fully understand what people were talking about. You have to understand, though, that back then when I was a kid, there wasn't a flow of information like we have now. It was just a trickle. There weren't any trending stories or tweets from NASA. At the most, you got updates on the morning or evening news. You'd get nightly news specials or maybe even a newspaper article, and it took months for the data to be compiled and then released back to the public. The Space Shuttle Challenger launched on January 28, 1986, after multiple delays. There was a lot of pressure to launch on time. Reading the timeline on the student handout, the first contract to build the rocket boosters was granted in 1974. That's 12 years before the actual launch of the Challenger shuttle. It's a really long view to wait for a project completion. A decade later, they were still perfecting the design of the solid rocket boosters. In 1985, new materials were ordered for completion of the project, and even months before the launch in August of 1985, NASA was briefed by the engineers of the current problems the design team was facing with the boosters. Obviously, if circumstances had been different socially, the whole outcome would have been different. There was pressure from the government to launch sooner to beat the European Space Agency. There was pressure to make more completed missions to account for all of the budgeting requests that NASA had made as a whole. NASA also wanted to have time to refurbish the launch pad for the next mission that was already scheduled. And there were a lot of factors pushing the launch instead of pushing for caution and evaluation. That was one of the major problems that I found now that I'm looking back on it, as an armchair quarterback with 20/20 hindsight. I think the real factor, though, is that the engineers were expected to double duty and not only be scientists and design these systems, but to also go to the administration and to advocate for safety and education to the mission managers. These engineers were highly qualified in their field and extremely intelligent, but were expected to be able to stand toe-to-toe with people that were running the budget and the timeline and the whole system. And these people who were coordinating the timing of the launch with the president's speech and the vice president's visit, and these engineers were expected to come in and explain to them sufficiently why these millions of dollars needed to be wasted for more testing, more safety. It wasn't the job of the engineers to both design the vital pieces of the shuttle and also advocate for safety standards as well. And I think it was unfair to expect them to. Overall, I think it would have made all the difference if NASA had listened to their engineers over the social demands for the launch. Also, I looked how to look up his name. Roger Beaujolais. I think he did all that he could have. I imagine, he took his worries to NASA, to the managers of the launch. He gave them the information he had. And I think it was reasonable that he expected them to listen to science and reason. And he was expected to be listened to saying, these things are unsafe, we need to do more. I think he did as much as he could. And to follow up with that, though, I don't think that loyalty to management should ever come before protecting the public welfare. I think it's morally wrong to expect otherwise. The welfare of the human race and all of those people that make it up should always be more important than budgets, timelines, or the convenience of others, even something as important as NASA and the president.